I don't know where to begin about what is going on with the Obama administration's bombing and this crazed alliance we have. You know, we're being played for complete suckers. We really are. We I don't know. I get tongue tied because I don't know where to begin. I just the fact that the Saudis, we have an alliance with the Saudis. So what I want to do tonight is just share with you a couple of pieces that I found today. One by Dennis Kucinich that was at Reader Supported News. And Dennis entitles it "The Real Reason We're Bombing Syria." Uh, he says the Obama administration's response to this past weekend's People's Climate March and the International Day of Peace had two responses. First of all, bomb Syria the following day to get control of the oil from ISIS, which gained a foothold directly in the region through the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and Jordan, funding and arming ISIS's predecessors in Syria. And second, the Obama administration's second response: send the president to the UN General Assembly, where he gave a rousing speech while the destruction of the environment and the shattering of world peace is on full display 5,000 miles away. And Kucinich is to the point. He said nothing better illustrates the bankruptcy of the Obama administration's foreign policy than funding groups that turn on the U.S. again and again, which Kucinich calls a neocon-fueled cycle of profits for war makers and destruction of ever-shifting so-called enemies. You know, this really, really, really is insane. It really is. Kucinich says the fact can't be refuted. ISIS was born of Western intervention in Iraq and covert action in Syria. This Frankenstein-like experiment of arming the alleged freedom-seeking Syrian opposition created the monster that roams the region. ISIS and the U.S. have a curious relationship. Mortal enemies that at the same time benefit from some of the same events. For example, A, ousting former Iraqi President al-Maliki for his refusal to consent to the continued presence of U.S. troops in his country. B, regime change in Syria. And C, arming the Kurds so they can separate from Iraq, a preliminary move to partitioning Iraq. What a coincidence, Kucinich points out, for war-profiteering neocons and the war industry, which has seen its stock rise since last week's congressional vote to fund the rapid expansion of war. We have met the enemy, and he isn't only ISIS, he's us. Phase 2 of the war against Syria is the introduction, and this just absolutely cracks me up. When I first heard about this, I thought, what in the hell? And as Kucinich points out, it's the introduction of 5,000 so-called moderate mercenaries who are to be trained in Saudi Arabia, which is the absolute, what do I want to call it? The heart the matrix, the blood central of what Wahhabism. This sick, twisted religion that's driving a lot of this reaction to U.S. intervention. And the initial installment, the initial cost to train these 5,000 people, $15 billion. Now, these new so-called moderates will replace the old moderates, who, surprise, surprise, turned out to be ISIS. Kucinich says the administration, in the belief you can buy, rent, or lease friends where they otherwise do not exist, labors under the vain assumption that our newfound comrades in arms will remain in place during their 3-year employment period. This is how long it's supposed to take to defeat ISIS. Ignoring the inevitability that these so-called friends you hire today will be firing at you tomorrow. One wonders if Saudi training of these moderate mercenaries will include methods of beheading, which were popularized by the Saudi government long before their ISIS progeny took up the grisly practice. The U.S. is being played. And you know why and how we're being played? We're being played because apparently this country, with its massive nuclear capability of annihilating the entire planet, we are led by idiots and morons. We really are. We really are. Or worse. You know, Obama, like Dick Cheney and George Bush, has no concept of no concept of international relations as they exist, especially in the Middle East, in this hotbed, in this sewer of death and destruction and religious madness. We're being played. As Kucinich points out, Qatar and Saudi Arabia can now overtly, right out there in public, join in the U.S. in striking Syria, after these two countries have been covertly attempting for years to take down the last secular state in the region, Syria. We are now advancing the agenda of the actual Islamic states, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, to fight the ersatz Islamic State of ISIS. We're being played. We're being made fools of, and the death and destruction is just beginning. Let me continue this when we come back after the break. So here we are on the same side temporarily until the bastards eventually turn on us like they always do. The same side as religious fanatics. The Saudis, the Qataris, the United Arab Emirates, who follow a brand of psychotic religious savagery that certainly Christianity has practiced in the course of history. When you think back on the witch burnings, the Inquisition, the destruction of the Jews, I mean, it's not just these crazy bastards, the Saudis. It seems that each of these religions have their ascendant moments where they go absolutely bloodlust crazy. So we are now on the same side as the bloodlust crazy Wahhabists, the ones who do what they do. I'm not going to go down the list, you know. So as Kucinich points out, now we have U.S. bombs and missiles that might make the world safe for theocracy, not democracy, but religious savagery. That's what we're doing. That's literally what we're doing. What does this have to do with the security of the security of the United States? Christ, what a question. Kucinich points out that when was it, last week or 10 days ago, Congress funded, they acted very prematurely in funding a war without following Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. But even while the funding was given, the explicit authorization to go to war was not. What did the Congress do? We talked about this. These little rat bastards all went home. Let Obama do it. To authorize war, Congress has to vote for a war. How long has it been since they've done that? I mean, really, since December 9th, 1941? So, as Kucinich points out, to sell its case for this next level of this religious war, the Obama administration is borrowing from the fear-mongering of the Bush administration. ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, the only reason, if there is one, that they would send someone to this country to cause death and destruction is an act of revenge or retaliation for what they have been dealing with. They are religious savages. They want to stay in their own area and set up their religiously savage theocracy. Why not let them? What difference does it make? ISIS poses no direct, immediate threat to the United States. All this talk over the past couple of days, because the new Iraqi president was at the UN. He made some comment about he had gotten some information that these ISIS savages were going to attempt something in the United States and France, I believe, subway bombings. Jesus Christ, did everything go off the charts, right? And turns out there was nothing there. Now, who said there was nothing there? U.S. intelligence services, which I wouldn't believe if they told me it's dark out in the east right now. But the French intelligence agency said the same thing. They're nothing. So Kucinich says the attack on Syria under the guise of striking ISIS is by definition a war of aggression. It's a violation, another one, of international law. It could lead to crimes against humanity and the deaths of untold numbers of innocent civilians, which it will. Every single time the United States gets involved in one of these wars, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians are butchered like so many pigs, just slaughtered. Their entire lives wiped out. Families, intergenerational, homes, villages, everything. And here we go again. And Kucinich says members of this Democratic administration, including the president who executed this policy, must be held accountable by the International Criminal Court and by the American people who he serves. That's a real knee slapper. You know, you had me, Dennis, up to that point. I'm not disagreeing with anything that Dennis Kucinich says. The American people hold Obama or Bush or Cheney or any of these people accountable? What? Never. Never. It'll never happen. Never. Because you know why? The typical America, if you ask, stop 5 people on the street, have a map of the world and say, hey, show me where Syria is. So concluding what Dennis Kucinich posted at reader-supported news, real reason we're bombing Syria. He mentions that something we all know, that war is a very powerful public relations tool for an administration in power, right? It's also a very cynical PR tactic. But he says, or Kucinich writes, I expect the bombing of Syria will momentarily boost the Obama administration's popularity with self-serving, heroic accounts of damage inflicted upon ISIS and all the equipment they use. And you know where they got the equipment. They got the equipment from the United States, either directly from us when we left it all in Iraq, or the equipment that we have given to Saudi Arabia, or the money that we gave them so they could buy it. I mean, it's total madness. And Kucinich says stuffing the November ballot box with bombs and missiles may even help the Democratic Party retain the Senate. But after the election, Kucinich says, the voters will discover that the president played into the hands of extremists, hurt civilians, and embroiled our country deep into yet another conflict in the Middle East. There were alternatives. The U.S. and the international community could have contained and shrunk ISIS by cutting off its funds and its revenue from sale of oil on the black market. We could have struck a deal with Syria and Iran. The American people, who in 2008 searched for something redemptive after years of Bush, realize here in 2014 that hope and change was nothing but a clever slogan. It was used to gain power and to keep it through promoting fear, war, the growth of the national security state, and an autumnal bonfire of countless billions of tax dollars which fall like leaves from money trees on the banks of the Potomac.